Human, your selection is complete.
I wasn't chosen. I earned this.
She's not afraid.
What if I told you that one woman's choice in an alien test could change everything we know about humanity? Right now, governments around the world are keeping something hidden. Scientists don't want you to know, and powerful people are working hard to keep this secret buried. But the truth behind this will absolutely shock you. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover 3 things that will change how you see reality. First, why did she pick the knife when she had 100 other options? Second, what did that choice reveal about human nature that terrifies the authorities? And third, how is this connected to everything happening in our world right now? This isn't just another Sci-Fi story. This is the story they don't want viral. This is what happens when an ordinary person makes an extraordinary choice. And this choice triggered a chain of events that could reshape our understanding of everything. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The spaceship descended through clouds of red dust. Sarah Martinez stood in the observation deck, looking out at an alien world she never expected to see. 3 weeks ago, she was an ordinary engineer working in California. Now she was light years from home, about to face something that would change her life forever. The aliens called themselves the Keepers. They weren't hostile. They weren't friendly either. They simply existed on a higher plane of understanding than humans. When they arrived on Earth, they didn't come to conquer. They came to study. They came to test. Out of 8 billion people on the planet, they chose Sarah. Nobody knew why. The governments tried to stop them. The military attempted to fight. Nothing worked. The Keepers simply took who they wanted, and Sarah was one of the chosen few. When she arrived on their ship, she met 99 other people. They came from every country, every background, every culture. A doctor from Brazil, a teacher from Japan, a farmer from Nigeria. They were all different, but they shared one thing in common. They were all about to face the same test. The lead keeper was called ZEX. His skin was blue like the ocean. His eyes were ancient, like they had seen a million worlds die. He brought them to a massive chamber. The walls glowed with soft light. The floor hummed with energy. "Welcome," ZEX said in perfect English, though his mouth never moved. His words appeared directly in their minds. "You are here because we need to understand something about your species. Humans are unpredictable. Humans are creative. But we do not know if humans can be trusted." 100 items sat on a table in front of them. Each item was different. Some were weapons. Some were tools. Some were things they couldn't even identify. Beautiful objects made from metals they'd never seen. Ancient-looking devices that pulsed with blue light. "You will each choose one item," ZEX explained. "Your choice will tell us everything about who you are. Your choice will show us what your species truly values. Your choice will determine the future of human civilization." Sarah's heart raced. This wasn't a test about intelligence. This wasn't about luck. This was about something deeper. This was about character. This was about what a person truly believes matters when faced with infinite possibilities. The others went first. An old man chose a golden coin. A young woman chose a mirror. A businessman chose a weapon that looked like it could destroy buildings. A musician chose an instrument that looked like nothing from Earth. Sarah watched each person. She saw their hands shake. She saw their faces show confusion. She saw their souls reveal themselves through their choices. Then it was her turn. Sarah approached the table slowly. She walked past the weapons. She walked past the beautiful objects. She walked past the mysterious devices that hummed with strange power. She knew what she wanted, but she was terrified, because she knew what it meant. At the end of the table sat a knife. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't magical looking. It was simple. It was made of dark metal. It was sharp, but what made it different was the symbol carved into the handle. It was a symbol for protection, for defense, for sacrifice. Sarah picked up the knife. The entire chamber went silent. The other 99 people gasped. The keeper's eyes changed color. ZEX moved forward. His face showed something Sarah had never seen in an alien before. It showed surprise. Interesting, ZEX said, and his voice sounded different now. Colder, more serious. You chose the only item we did not expect anyone to choose. You chose the tool of defense, the tool of standing against the darkness, the tool that means you would protect others before protecting yourself. Sarah didn't understand what she had done. She didn't know that her choice would unlock secrets. She didn't know that picking that knife would expose truths that governments wanted buried. She didn't know that one simple decision would set her on a path toward discovering what the Keepers really wanted from humanity. But everything was about to change. After Sarah picked the knife, the Keepers took the group to separate chambers. They were isolated. They were alone. For hours, nothing happened. Sarah sat in a white room with nothing but her thoughts and the knife in her hands. Then the walls changed. Images appeared. They were memories. But they weren't her memories. They were visions of the future. Sarah watched scenes play out in front of her eyes. She saw cities glowing with clean energy. She saw forests growing instead of disappearing. She saw people helping each other instead of hurting each other. But she also saw darkness. She saw conflict. She saw destruction. She saw humanity at a crossroads, forced to make a choice that would echo through eternity. A voice appeared in her mind. It was ZEX. What you see is our gift and our curse, ZEX said. We have visited 3,000 worlds. We have watched 3,000 species grow. And we have discovered something terrifying. Species like yours can go two directions. They can evolve toward light, or they can descend toward darkness. Sarah tried to speak, but no words came. Your choice reveals your path, ZEX continued. Most of your kind chose weapons. They chose power. They chose dominance. But you chose defense. You chose sacrifice. This means something important. This means your species might have hope. The visions disappeared. The white walls returned. Sarah was alone again, but she understood now. The test wasn't about judgment. It was about possibility. It was about finding the people in humanity who could show others the way forward. She was released back to Earth the next day. But everything was different now. When she landed in California, government agents were waiting. They took her to a secret facility. They asked her questions for 16 hours straight. Where did the aliens take you? What did they want? What did they show you? What did you choose? Sarah told them nothing. Not because she was strong, but because she understood something they didn't. The Keepers hadn't taken her to give her weapons or power. They had taken her to activate something inside her. Something that had always been there. Something that only the right test could awaken. For 3 months, they kept her locked away. But word leaked out. Videos appeared on the internet. People started asking questions. Why did the government take that woman? What was she hiding? What did she know? Sarah became famous. Then she became a target. Powerful people didn't want her story told. Corporations that profited from weapons and destruction wanted her silenced. Governments that built their power on control and dominance wanted her gone. But she had something they didn't have. She had the truth. And she had the knife. The knife became a symbol. It represented the choice humanity faced. Protection or dominance. Service or control. Evolution or stagnation. People started coming to her. Scientists who wanted to understand what happened. Activists who wanted to change the world. Ordinary people who felt the same pull she felt. They all wanted to know. How could they make the same choice? How could they activate whatever she had awakened? Sarah moved to a small town outside Seattle. She kept the knife in a locked box. She studied everything the keepers had shown her. She began to understand the patterns. The future wasn't fixed. It was a choice that every single person could make. Every day, every moment, every decision was an opportunity to choose protection or dominance, to choose service or control. She started writing. She started teaching. She started speaking to crowds about what she had experienced. And people listened, because they could feel the truth in her words, because something inside them knew she was right. But the opposition grew stronger too. Government agencies increased their surveillance. Wealthy interests began to discredit her. Media outlets that they controlled started spreading lies. They called her crazy. They called her a liar. They said the aliens never existed. They said it was all fiction. But the more they fought, the more people believed her. Because deep down, everyone knew the truth. They had always known it. Humanity was at crossroads, and one woman's choice in an alien test had shown the path forward. 6 months after Sarah's story went public, something unexpected happened. Other people came forward. They claimed they had also been taken by the keepers. They claimed they had also been tested. And they claimed they had been chosen because they made similar choices to Sarah. A doctor from India said she had chosen a medicine instead of weapons. A teacher from Brazil said he had chosen a book instead of power. A farmer from Kenya said she had chosen seeds instead of gold. Each person had made a choice that revealed their true nature. Each person had been shown visions of the future. Each person was now being hunted by those who wanted to suppress the truth. They formed a network. They called themselves the Chosen. Not because they thought they were better than others, but because they had all chosen the same path. The path of service. The path of protection. The path of evolution. Sarah became their leader, though she never wanted to be. She didn't see herself as special. She just saw herself as someone who made a choice and was trying to understand what that choice meant. But people followed her because they could feel something different about her. Something that made them believe that change was possible. The keepers didn't contact them again, but Sarah began to understand why. They had planted seeds. They had awakened something in certain humans. Now it was humanity's responsibility to grow. Now it was humanity's job to make the right choices and create the future that the visions had shown. The opposition became more aggressive. There were attacks. There were threats. There were attempts to discredit the entire movement. A wealthy businessman spread false stories. A government official leaked false documents. A media empire launched a coordinated campaign to make the Chosen look like a cult. But something remarkable happened. The more they attacked, the more people started questioning. The more they tried to suppress the truth, the more people started searching for it. It was like the universe itself was working to expose what had been hidden. Sarah's message was simple. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't based on religion or politics or economics. It was just this. Every person had the power to choose. Every person had the power to shape the future. Every person could become a protector instead of a conqueror. Every person could choose service instead of dominance. The movement grew. It spread from America to Europe, then to Asia, then to Africa, and then to every corner of the planet. People started making similar choices in their own lives. They started asking themselves the same question that the keepers had forced Sarah to face. What do I truly value? What would I choose if all options were available to me? Governments couldn't stop it. Corporations couldn't buy their way out of it. Media couldn't distort it enough to kill it. Because the movement wasn't about Sarah anymore. It was about humanity recognizing something it had always known, but had forgotten. That the future wasn't determined. That the future was a choice. That every single person, from the richest to the poorest, from the most powerful to the most humble, had the power to shape what came next. Scientists tried to explain what had happened to Sarah. Some said it was advanced technology that could create hallucinations. Some said it was psychological manipulation. Some said it was real alien contact that proved extraterrestrial intelligence existed. But Sarah didn't care what the scientists thought. She cared about what the movement was creating. She cared about the changes she saw happening in the world. More people were choosing compassion over greed. More people were choosing protection over dominance. More people were asking themselves the hard question, what kind of future do I want to create? The knife sat in her home, on a shelf that anyone could see. It was no longer hidden. It was no longer mysterious. It was simply a tool, a symbol, a reminder that one choice, made by one person, could change everything. 2 years after Sarah first chose the knife, the world looked different. Not completely different, but different enough that observers could see the change happening. Renewable energy projects were being funded at unprecedented levels. Environmental protection laws were being strengthened. Education systems were being reformed to teach compassion alongside competition. It wasn't that everyone had suddenly become perfect. Conflict still existed. Corruption still happened. Greed still motivated some people. But the balance had shifted. The momentum had changed. More people were choosing the path of service, and fewer people were choosing the path of dominance. The government agencies that had tried to suppress Sarah eventually shut down their operations against her. It became clear that fighting the movement was impossible. It was too big. It was too diverse. It was rooted in something too fundamental to human nature. Instead, governments began to adapt. Some countries started implementing policies based on the principles that the chosen had identified. Policies that valued long-term sustainability over short-term profit. Policies that protected the vulnerable instead of enriching the powerful. Policies that recognized that humanity's future depended on cooperation, not competition. Sarah gave speeches. She wrote books. She met with world leaders. But she was careful to always say the same thing. She wasn't special. She wasn't the answer. She was just someone who made a choice and was trying to help others understand that they could make the same choice. The other chosen became important figures too. The doctor from India helped establish hospitals that served the poor. The teacher from Brazil started schools that educated children from all backgrounds. The farmer from Kenya created agricultural projects that helped entire regions become self-sufficient. They didn't do it for fame or money. They did it because they understood something that the keepers had shown them. That the future was alive. That the future was responsive to human choice. That every action, no matter how small, created ripples that affected what came next. But there were still powerful people who resisted. Some billionaires refused to accept the changing world. Some politicians fought against the new laws. Some media moguls continued to spread false information. They knew what was happening. They understood that a shift in human consciousness was taking place. And they were terrified. Sarah received death threats. The chosen faced sabotage. Their projects were attacked. Their reputations were assaulted. But they didn't respond with violence. They responded with determination. They responded by building faster. They responded by creating more change. And something remarkable happened. The people who had been fighting them started to change too. Some of them experienced the same awakening that Sarah had experienced. Some of them began to question their own choices. Some of them realized that the path of dominance led only to loneliness and emptiness. A famous billionaire gave away most of his fortune. A powerful politician changed his entire platform. A media executive started producing content that told the truth instead of perpetuating lies. They didn't become the chosen. They didn't need to. They simply made their own choice. They simply decided that protecting the future was more important than hoarding power. The keepers never returned. But Sarah understood why. They had already planted what needed to be planted. They had already tested what needed to be tested. Now it was humanity's turn. Now it was time for humans to prove that they could be trusted. Now it was time for humans to show that they could evolve. Years passed. The movement continued to grow. It changed names. It evolved into new forms. But the core principle remained the same. That every person had power. That every person had choice. That every person could shape the future. Sarah became an elder. Younger leaders emerged. New movements built on the foundation that the Chosen had created. And the world continued its slow transformation from a system based on competition and dominance to a system based on cooperation and service. 40 years after Sarah picked the knife, historians were still trying to understand what had happened. How had one woman's choice created such a massive shift in human consciousness? How had a Sci-Fi encounter changed the trajectory of an entire civilization? Sarah was old now. Her hair was silver. Her hands were lined with age. But her eyes still held the same clarity that had guided the movement from its beginning. She sat in a garden overlooking a valley that had once been polluted and dying. Now it was alive with forests and streams and creatures that had thought were extinct. A young journalist asked her the question that everyone wanted answered. Was any of it real? Did the keepers actually exist? Did you really choose a knife in an alien test? Sarah smiled. She picked up a book she had written decades earlier. The cover showed the simple knife, the symbol of protection carved into the handle. Does it matter? She asked. What matters is that something shifted inside humanity. Something woke up. Something remembered that we have the power to choose our future. Whether that something was real aliens or something inside the human mind itself. Does the answer change anything? The journalist didn't know how to respond. I'll tell you what I know for certain, Sarah continued. I was taken somewhere. I was shown something. I made a choice. And that choice activated something inside me that changed how I see the world. Maybe the keepers were real. Maybe they were a projection of my unconscious mind. Maybe they were something else entirely. But the effect is undeniable. The world is better than it was. The future is brighter than it would have been. She closed the book. The truth they didn't want me discovering wasn't about aliens. It wasn't about technology. It was about human potential. It was about the fact that every single person has the power to create change. That's what terrified the powerful. That's what they tried to suppress. Because once humans understand that they have power, they can't be controlled anymore. The journalist asked one more question. Do you think the keepers will come back? Sarah looked out at the transformed valley. She looked at a world that had slowly chosen compassion over greed. She looked at a humanity that was learning to cooperate instead of just compete. I don't think they need to, she said. Their test wasn't about judgment. It was about awakening. They showed us what we're capable of. Now it's our job to prove that we can be trusted. But here's what nobody expected. 45 years after the keepers departed, scientists made a discovery. They found ancient records, historical documents from thousands of years ago. They showed that the keepers had visited Earth before. Not once, but dozens of times. And each time, they had left behind the same gift. They had chosen certain humans. They had given them tests. They had asked them to choose. And throughout history, those chosen humans had created massive shifts in consciousness. They had inspired movements. They had sparked revolutions. They had awakened humanity to its own potential. The knife that Sarah chose wasn't unique. Archaeologists found similar items in museums around the world. Tools that had been chosen by others in centuries past. Each one had belonged to someone who had changed the world. Each one was a symbol of the same awakening. Sarah was part of a chain a chain of humans who had been tested by the Keepers across thousands of years. And now, the question became clear. What if the Keepers weren't visiting Earth to judge us? What if they were visiting us to remind us who we really are? Think about this. The biggest revelation isn't that aliens visited Earth. The biggest revelation is that humanity has this power inside it all along. The power to choose. The power to create. The power to transform the world. Sarah's story shows us something essential. One person's choice can change everything. One person's awakening can inspire millions. One person's decision to protect instead of dominate can reshape civilization. Right now, you're facing your own test. Maybe not from aliens, but from life, from the choices in front of you, from the question of who you want to become and what kind of world you want to create. This video is just the beginning. If this story opened your mind, subscribe for more revealing Sci-Fi narratives that challenge everything you think you know. Hit the like button if you believe humanity has untapped potential. And comment below, what choice would you make? If you had infinite options in front of you, what would you choose? Join our community. Watch our next video about the hidden history of human awakening. And remember, your choice matters. Your voice matters. The future is being created right now, and you're creating it.